ladies and gentlemen, in the blue corner, standing at a sleek 5'11", 245 pounds, the tumultuous tempest of technique, Thomas Lilly. And in the red corner, at a curvaceous 5'11", 315 pounds, the jovial juggernaut of judgment, John Cheryl Sheridan. A meeting of the masters of mastication. Turn your attention as they delve deep into all things lifting and more. This is Peak Speak.
We're back after playing with microphones for an hour for another episode of Peak Speak.
You didn't actually do anything though.
I didn't have to because my setup was perfect. Today, we have a very special guest, and we're in a very special location in Melbourne.
Is the location special, or is the reason that we're in Melbourne special? Because I think those are two different things.
We have Matt
We're gonna end
Stenzel.
up really close. By the end
Yeah,
of this.
I know.
We're just going to spin slowly. It's going to be great.
We have
Don't get
Matt-
jealous, Sarah. It's okay.
We have Matt Stenzel, and this is the Bread Podcast edition.
Ah, good. Love bread.
Say hello,
I
Matt.
miss it. Hey guys.
First point of contention. Do you guys get salty when people say the Arnold versus Arnold's? Have you seen everyone getting real salty about that?
I haven't seen that at all.
I have seen none of that.
People are like, don't say the Arnold, or don't say Arnold, say the Arnold.
The Arnold.
I
This
just
is
don't.
the Arnold Classic.
Yeah, I don't care either way. I just call it Pro Roll.
See, but isn't it actually called the Arnold Sports Festival?
Exactly. So it's not Arnold's. It's the
Maybe
Arnold.
it's like the S is for sports.
That's not how English works. But okay, we'll go with it.
We do sports.
Sports. We had this discussion, my girlfriend and I had this discussion about whether, because for the last few years, speed cubing has been right next to Pro Raw, and the discussion has been whether speed cubing qualifies as a sport. And we haven't come to a firm decision on what a sport is versus a game.
See, I'm definitely going to say yes because I have a speed cube in the top drawer of my desk at the gym, and speed cubing was a long-term enjoyment hobby sport of mine.
But the weird thing about speed cubing is that it's just an algorithm.
Yeah.
And once you know it, you just do it as fast as you can. So it's kind of more like a dance, and you just got to do it as quick as you can.
Okay.
Some would argue squatting, bench pressing, and deadlifting is just a physical algorithm. And once you know it, you just do it. But better.
Matt, there's not many people on earth that know me better than you know me. How do I do everything in my life?
I don't know what answer you want from me.
By algorithms is the correct
Okay, good.
The podcast friendly answer.
Yeah, right.
Alright. So, we're going to interview Matt.
Are we? Is that what we're doing?
We're,
Matt, who are you? What do you do?
yeah, tell us more about Matt.
Matt.
The man.
All right. Matt, I'm a powerlifter. I've been doing it since I was 14, I think.
How old are you now?
29. Shockingly.
Turn my phone off.
Disgustingly.
That's a rookie error. Sorry. Continue.
Yeah. Powerlifting since I was pretty young, and that's pretty much all the sport I ever did. And now I live in Brisbane, and I do massage therapy for work.
How long have you been in Brisbane for?
Since 2012.
Sweet.
Yeah. Moved up there after Nationals that year.
And you moved up to start massage therapy up there?
No, I moved up to train at PTC Brisbane.
Yeah.
After going to Nationals that year, I was like, I need to be around people who train.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, because with me, I thought I was like the strongest teenager in the world because no one else did powerlifting in Ballina.
Yes.
And then I went to GPC Nationals 2012 and everyone was better than me.
Was that the year I taught you everything you know about
That was
sumo
the year
deadlifts?
that you entered my life and changed everything.
Yeah, a fun time.
We all did GBC Nationals, all three of us.
Yeah.
We did. The
In-
first JPC Nationals.
In the junior
Was it the
division.
first one?
Yeah, it was the first one.
2012 was the
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah.
I remember when Ron told me about it, he said that, because I was planning on doing an OPO meet, but there was like 8 people doing it as usual because we were all...
Eight's
Isn't that-
huge
isn't
for
that
OPO.
a fucking
Yeah.
absolute record for
Well,
OPO?
it was a pretty big deal at the time. And then he told me about this other federation that just started, and there was like, I called Scott, and it was like 92 people entered, and I thought, shit, I have to go.
Yeah, big deal.
Yeah.
It was a fun comp. What's
That
your
was a
favorite?
fun comp.
What's your favorite memory of that comp? Besides meeting your new friend Tom Bro 7 that you found on bodybuilding.com.
Yes.
The meeting of Tom Bro and
Isn't that where-
Don't say
Stenzinator.
that name.
Isn't that
Stenzinator.
where we all found powerlifting? That's certainly where I found powerlifting.
Well, I heard about some car forum other people found powerlifting on, but
Yeah, look, I like driving cars because it's easier than walking. That's about the extent of how far down a car for I'm going to end up.
Favourite memory from that was learning about the age correction with the Gloss Brenner, which lost me second place and put me in third behind Kelly.
Kelly came second. Who came first? What was that guy's name?
Reese,
trained with Greg Gordon.
Yeah.
he was actually really strong.
He was really
around
strong
for a couple of years as well. He did an equipped... I think he and I competed equipped against each other at... Maybe it was like the 2013 GPC Nats.
I just remember
equipped.
how intense that crew was. Like Greg was beating the shit out of him.
Yeah, I remember them getting their knees wrapped and thinking, "What the fuck?" Because even though I came from equipped lifting, I used to just like kind of place them on my leg.
Yeah, the difference between putting knee wraps on your knees.
Man, I was watching Reese get it done by Greg, and I thought, "Holy shit!" Like, no wonder he squatted. I think he squatted like 240 at that time, which was massive.
Yeah.
So you moved up to Brisbane to start training at PTC Brisbane.
Yeah.
And then how did you fall into the massage side of things?
I was already doing massage before that, but back down in Ballina, because I finished my course a while before this, and I didn't really feel like I knew enough, because the courses are pretty crappy.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to do was pretty specific, like work with people who, have the things that I have, injuries and stuff, from lifting and training. And so I kind of went down there and mentored with people in Ballina as long as I could while it was safe to have no income living with my parents. And then moved to Brisbane because after the comp I thought, this is the place I need to be. And I got a job initially at an acupuncture clinic in Toowong. And then I slowly started doing like 1 or 2 or 3 treatments a week over at PTC Brisbane, and then eventually shifted over. Only recently, 3 years ago now nearly, that I opened my own place.
3 years? Fuck, it's gone quick.
It's come quick, and I only know that because I have to renegotiate my lease.
Yeah, well. So you've got your own place now, and you've got a few therapists underneath you?
Yeah. Well, side by side.
Side by side?
Yeah.
Working with you?
It's been good.
Yeah, it's really cool. Because I came and saw you at your house in Toowong shortly after you first moved. I came and did this. I'd never had a massage before in my life.
I'm sure that was all above board licensed massage in a residential location.
Making fun of my industry right now.
Yep.
This is the problem.
Exactly.
Look, it's a cheap joke, which we would expect from John, especially seeing he's added about 8,000 beers.
I'm an athlete and I'm here to compete.
What are you competing in?
Speed cubing.
Exactly. That's the trick, is you trash talk the sport so everyone thinks you're not very good at it. You just walk in and I've been speed cubing my ass off.
So you've been doing the massage thing for a while now, and that's probably what's gotten you a big rep, especially locally, so where we're from in Queensland. You're known as like the guy that you go see when you're a powerlifter, and obviously you branched out into a few different sports and people have found you and you've grown your business in that way, but especially in the powerlifting community, people know you as the massage guy, the needling guy, as well as your lifting. This is outside of your lifting. So I guess we wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the question that I had was, what value do you see in that side of stuff? What do you recommend for people to do when it comes to massage, dry needling? What's your view on it all?
Well, typically when someone comes in, they've got a problem. Sometimes it's outside of our scope of practice, and like it's a genuine injury. So if they've got something like they've just dislocated their shoulder, I'll pretty much say to them, if you suspect it, you need to go and get it looked at. And that's when we refer out. We do a lot of referring out to the right people, because having good connections like that is part of the service as far as I'm concerned.
I think that's powerful for anyone in the industry that we work in, though. There's a lot of, more so I think from the coaching side of things rather than like your sort of realm in the industry, but there's a lot of coaches who think they're physios.
Yeah, man.
And
it's
like not understanding your scope of practice is a fundamental flaw in anyone's coaching abilities.
Yeah.
Because when you try and know everything, I think you end up being very average at a lot of things.
Yeah.
And potentially putting people in harm's way.
It can be really hard to know though, like when something is genuinely a problem.
Yeah.
Or when it's just like, okay, you've been benching really poorly.
Yeah.
And so usually the first step that we have, if somebody comes in, like I always recommend go get your technique looked at. Because if it's like crappy, then well, it doesn't really matter what we do in this room. Like you might be fine for a little bit.
Yeah.
Or you might not even, because the way you're doing everything is really, really poor. That might not mean you need a physio, but you just need to get your lifting checked out. So
I think that's a big credit to you as well in your practice, is that that's a sign of security, right? You're secure enough in your ability to continue to serve clients that you can refer people out. And the other thing is that people are coming to see you sometimes for a specific issue like that, and you might know the source of the issue is outside of your scope, so you'll send them out, which shows that you care about them actually returning to the platform.
Man, that's what we always talk about this. Like, even if somebody's if we need to send them away to get treated by someone specifically who knows this stuff, or to a coach, I see that as being, if you can provide them what they're looking for, which is their pain to go away, well, we won, like, that's a good thing.
Even if that doesn't mean extra dollars in your bank account.
Man, we are in a really safe position where we're pretty well known now anyway.
Yeah.
So it's I guess it is a security thing. I don't really need to worry about that, but
I imagine you had that thought well before you were in a position to...
I feel like that's probably where the security comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
We've always tried to put people first. Yeah. And that comes from me, because I don't want to get like, I hate feeling... When I first moved to Brisbane, I went to uni and did physio for a year. And I remember going to the student clinic there, and I got a treatment from somebody, one of the physios, and I thought, if this is what it's going to be like after, doing a whole degree, and if I haven't practiced... if I haven't been practicing for this 3 years, I've been studying instead. I don't want to do that. I could just keep doing what I'm doing and get good at this. But I remember getting a treatment from this one physio for like 10 weeks in a row, just trusting the process. And it really sucked. It didn't get me any better. I got super frustrated. And it was just like some anterior shoulder pain. I think I just had really bad form, but nobody was around then to tell me what was going on. But I just, I trusted the process. And so if I can ever say to somebody, like, here's where you can nip this process in the bud and just get an answer that you need. And the first, like, the hierarchy is, like, get your form looked at first. Unless you've had, like, an acute problem, like you definitely dislocated your shoulder, doing a power clean or something. Well, then get yourself looked at, and then from technique point of view, and then we can move forward with other things. Yeah.
I think that really, like what you were just talking about, then from my perspective as a coach who regularly refers people to yourself and people like yourself, is it highlights your understanding of the sport as well, which just adds to the value that you can provide. So if someone comes and sees you, for example, and they've got like a pulling on the outside of their knee, so they say, I have a knee problem, how they squat, or what a squat should be, so you can look at a squat and be like, okay, well, the caving in there, TFL is probably getting jacked up, glute med's probably getting jacked up, it's getting some referral, and then you can say, well, that's tight, yes, that's where your pain is, but it's probably coming from this, so then you can treat it more appropriately and get more outcomes out of them.
Yeah, man.
And the other thing is, you can say, this is where the issue's coming from, so here's some advice to correct it, or go and see X coach and get on top of that.
Yeah. No, and that's where it flirts with like the physio world, where you start to give advice like that. But there is a certain level of like I guess experience you can impart there about like try this thing, can you see how this is doing this, and it might explain to them enough that they can kind of like incept themselves a bit and get it, because ultimately that's the most powerful advice, I think, when people can
incept
like, just
themselves.
get it.
That's your whole business model. I'm just working on instituting self-inception.
I wish I could scrub that part out.
That's not how this podcast works. It goes live and unedited. Sometimes to our detriment.
There's the media team.
He arrives tomorrow.
Sam's coming tomorrow, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'll talk to him about scrubbing it.
Sometimes we remember to tell him to cut bits out, and then sometimes we don't.
Slip him a 50 and watch the magic happen.
Do we ever go that far?
I don't have $50.
Neither do I. We're powerlifting coaches.
I spent it all on this overpriced Airbnb directly above the train station.
Yeah, it's a really good spot though. Mine is literally 10 kilometers away.
Yeah, that'll happen.
So, do you think for people who are going to see therapists regularly that there's any warning signs that they should look for if this therapist doesn't really know what they're doing? Like, to stop them getting caught in this cycle of constant treatment, tighten up, going around in circles?
Yeah. I guess like the number one thing is like, are they just touching on the spot that you're touching and saying this is sore? Like if someone's just literally, if you're coming in with like the front of the shoulder pain and they just keep on touching your delt over and over on the front, well, that's probably going to be a pretty shallow view of the situation. Whereas if someone's giving you some, well, I guess no, as a better explanation. Like I get our therapist to explain what they're going to do in the session before it starts. Like if somebody comes in with anterior shoulder pain, we'll say, okay, we'll work on the symptomatic stuff because there's a good chance there's some issues there, but here's the other things that can usually lead to that even having become a problem in the first place. And in explaining that process, people give you some nods or some shakes of the head, and you can kind of figure out what's going on. I guess, did they engage with your problem and try and talk about what might be happening, versus did they just say, all right, I'll cover yourself up, I'll see you in a second.
I think that's as I've matured as a coach, that's one of the things I've realized more and more, that so much of coaching and therapy and like that whole realm is actually just about dealing with people first. And like understand, and that's where I think some of these clinicians of a variety of different types fall down, is that they look at it as like muscles first, and then they forget there's a person behind those muscles.
Yeah.
Where like actually making the connection and explaining that and getting the person to empathizing with the person that you're treating or coaching or whatever the situation may be, but also getting them to engage and buy into the process. Because ultimately that's, at least from my point of view, how this is going to work, right? Like, I would imagine, from what I know of you as a person and as a businessman, you're not the sort of person who's like, okay, we're going to sign you up for a membership and we're going to treat you once a week for the rest of your life. No. The goal is to get them back to the platform under the bar and performing well, and then not need you again.
And to do that, you need to talk to them about like sometimes what do they think's wrong, because they've got a good idea too. Like they're lifters, they've probably been on Dr. Google now for a long time, and they've probably tried other stuff.
Yeah.
So if ever they've had a physio, I'd say, well, what did they do? Did it work? Was there anything that anybody did that worked? Like give us some. We can do those things that you thought helped as well.
Yeah.
But also, man, like people because we have heaps of clients that come every week or fortnight or something like that, and like a big thing I always tell people is like even powerlifting done perfectly, it's still gonna cause problems.
Oh yeah.
Like just benching over and over again, you're gonna get tight pecs, and that comes with it, issues. It's not always gonna be like an acute issue, like your lower back hurts on the left after a squat session. But if you can like mitigate those problems before they begin, like if your traps get really, really tight and your pecs get really tight, you'll probably get like an anteriorly tilted scap, and that can lead to heaps of things. So if you can get that worked on because you know it's a thing for you, then you're ahead of the game then.
It's prevention instead of treatment.
So really, I want to get people to that point where they're not going to have any problems. They're not going to let those problems build up to a point where all the arm pain or all the TFL issues you're talking about never really gets there, because they've been taking care of those things in the first place.
Yeah,
which are natural because powerlifting's a sport and you push the boundaries, and even on a simple level, your quads get tight from squatting. It's not always like a stability problem. It's just you just worked your quads really hard and they got really tight. That can cause things. Yeah.
How much of that do you think is inherent in the sport and the approach to the sport itself versus poorly executed programming principles and training methods?
I'd say most of it's to do with poorly executed programming and training principles.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get strong the wrong way. Like whether that's with just plugging in a lot more volume into a technique system that's not great, or just poor decisions, like going heavy all the time or something, like that. You're never going to build any tolerance to training, and you're going to get the same kind of compensation because you don't have the ability to stabilize those weights all the time. We see that. We'd more often than not see we'd see a unilateral issue that's come up because of an instability versus my quad's really tight because I squatted, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the sport itself is like quite safe if you do it right.
Yeah.
You just get those little things. That's a maintenance thing, but mostly, man, we see people with things like, one arm hurts, or my left lower back always gets sore, can't arch, that kind of stuff,
So coming back to like the value of treatment, we keep saying this word treatment. Can you talk us through maybe like what massage actually does, the physiological process that's happening, and then maybe touch on the other stuff you do? So needling, recently you went and did a course on ART.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through those modalities, maybe the benefits of them, and where they might not work for powerlifters or something like that as well?
Yeah, so I
And
guess
most importantly, how can I most efficiently break up my own scar tissue with a foam roller?
you can't whack it.
Cool.
With the roller.
Good. Glad we're on the same page.
All right, podcast is over. Thank you very much. Give us 5 stars.
It's been nice. Okay, so it's a tough one with massage because it's got a lot of evidence behind it for pain relief, but the mechanism by which it's working is something that's not always known. So we know trigger points, we know they exist in muscles, and you can decrease them with the size of them. They can see them with like special kinds of ultrasound. You can decrease them with dry needling, you can decrease them with just trigger point work. They refer pain out to other places. But massage itself, I think, is more of a fascial movement thing, getting like stripping through muscles and getting that fascia to move better. And trigger pointing, I guess, is where most of the work gets done with pain relief, I'd say. And that's where you're just trying to get rid of the trigger points with needling or massage and stop the referral pain that comes from. They actually don't even understand really yet how they can cause pain from a peripheral area to refer somewhere else, because everyone always says pain is from the brain. So it's a bit of
Surely our understanding of pain is so incomplete that some of that is just speculation more than anything else.
It's one of those things, man, where they know that it works, but they can't really tell you why yet.
Yeah.
They know that it decreases the way that the trigger point presents, and there's like minimum dosages, like 3 twitch responses into the trigger point with a needle will make a big change, especially over like 3 treatments. But they don't really know yet what happens. There's a bunch of chemical cascades and stuff that happen, but they know that it reduces trigger point referral pain and the size of it on this ultrasound that they can do. ART was an interesting one. It's something I always wanted to do because in the US it's kind of held as this gold standard of treatment. And what I like about it is it's got protocols. So instead of having to, I guess, come up with a treatment plan, like something really that would be great for me, especially having therapists working with us now, is being able to say, do protocol 2.
Yeah, like systemizing the whole thing.
Yeah, I really like that idea. Like it makes things really replicable, and that's something I'm
and easy to teach and scale as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I always was really interested in that. And also, I know I'm not going to do it wrong. Like if there's a protocol that someone got done from someone else over in the US and they came to me, I could just do what they said.
Yeah.
That kind of thing's just really cool to me. But ART turned out to not be what I thought it was. It's about sliding structures, so getting one tissue to pass another one without any adhesions, so these like fascial adhesions, and that's like scar tissue type thing, but it's not scar tissue in the way we see it, where it's like a chunk of scar tissue. It's more like these little fibers that kind of constrict and stop things from moving. So ART was very like a superficial type pressure, and it's more about getting like lateral movement of one thing past another so that they don't impede each other's movement. So if you've got a nerve line close to a muscle, you want to put some tension on one in a direction that's going to push it past where it would be able to adhere to the other structure and move into that range of motion, the end range at the same time. So that you've got, you've forced one structure to move past the other and you've got separation. And that's going to cause, like if you've got a neural impingement like that, it can stop that nerve from getting pressure on it. And but that was designed for like Ironman and stuff like that. It wasn't so much designed for like big guys. And when the stuff I'd seen about ART was really the heavy pressure down, but that's not actually how you're meant to do it. So I'm still figuring how to implicate or how to work that through into our treatments, because like working on someone's piriformis through their glute, if you're a lifter and you've got a giant glute, it's really hard with the kind of like that sideways pressure that they want you to get you to do. It's something I'm still figuring out, but there's a fair few places so far where I've had some success with it, like especially median nerve pain in the forearm, because it's a bit more like usually there's less fat tissue there, and also we just have less muscle. So yeah.
So how do you approach choosing what modality to use? Do you have a preference for one over the other, or is it a case by case thing? Like what's your thought process behind?
Well, they're basically the 3 things that we do. Like massage work, including trigger pointing work, dry needling, and ART when it's necessary. If I've got... sometimes people hate needles. And if they hate needles, well, then we don't do any. Is that all good?
Yeah, keep talking.
Oh, that's cool.
We can't tell if you're quiet if you don't talk.
Oh, good. Yes, sweet. So if people hate needles, and a lot of people do hate needles, then we won't do any dry needling. But I really like using it for anyone who's got any pain that I think is going to be referred. If they're just really tight, I don't always go that way. But I'm pretty preferential to dry needling. I think it's a really efficient way of doing it, especially if you can do it right. And you can tolerate the ache after, because it kind of leaves you a bit dead for a while. ART though, I like to do that when I think there's going to be any like neural impingement. Thomas is showing me his pec bruise from dry needling.
I've bent a few needles with my glutes.
Yeah, it's not that hard to do because, especially on the glutes, you need a long.
Yeah, well, I got a big ass.
Yeah, and
in case you can't tell.
And you got to like
voice.
Plunge it in and out, and it can get stuck in the bed a little bit.
Yeah, I've had a couple come out like at right angles.
Yeah.
Did you go? Are we stuck now on my ass through my voice?
We are, yeah.
Like,
The imagery is fantastic.
it's the best part about voice. It's all the imagery's in your head.
So where do you stand when it comes to self-treatment, foam rolling, trigger point stuff? Because from me as a coach and my personal perspective, it's like, from a scientific perspective, foam rolling it just seems pointless. But for me, because I get asked the question all the time, should I do foam rolling or should I spend ages on a roller before I train? And it's like, well, if you look at the science, there's not a lot to say that it's actually doing anything besides a local blood flow response. But for me personally, the transition from me working at my desk, getting up and getting onto a roller for 5 to 10 minutes, even though for me I'm not thinking, okay, this is doing my body any good, it starts the mental process because it's been part of my routine for so long.
Yeah.
It like starts mentally gearing me for like, okay, I'm not working anymore, I'm now training. So that's a benefit that's enough to justify me keeping it in.
It's especially important in the scenario, like things like that start the routine, I think are especially important for people like you and I, and to a certain extent you, Matt, but less so, but like you and I both train where we work.
Yeah.
And so being like having
a separation.
Yeah, and that's I've really
this
struggled with that as well, and having like a routine where here's the switch, and if it's something like that, like the placebo effect is an effect.
Well,
it's a measurable
there's
effect.
that. I think that's really valid for like specifically in like our situation where you need to create some kind of like movement between where you're going to work and when you're going to train. A psychological thing, that's something. But I just don't think the evidence on foam rolling has been done in a way that's actually good. Like, I don't use a foam roller to roll and do 10 passes on my leg, but I will use it to pivot over my thoracic and like mobilize it. I think that's the way it should be used.
Use it as a
and then you can use it as a trigger point ball on your lat, maybe.
Yeah.
Like that stuff works, but the evidence on that's not really been checked. Like they're measuring does it work to roll and like foam roll. And I don't think that's a usable. I think that all we know about that is it desensitizes the skin, so you can kind of get moving a little quicker, and there's a blood flow response in what you guys are talking about. But
of that can be just done with moving instead.
Well, man,
of
it
just
is done
lying
with
on the
moving
floor.
too,
Yeah.
which is why I think that's totally true. I think the foam rolling stuff it doesn't really do much unless it's doing something for you, so keep doing it. But whenever I tell someone like foam roll, it's usually I'm talking about like pivot over your thoracic, use it as something to manipulate position so you can mobilize better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of get a little pissed off when people talk about foam rolling in a negative way, because it makes all that invalid, but that's not invalid. Like opening up your thoracic with a foam roller underneath, it's a really valid way of mobilizing extension.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome way to look at it, because that just ties into what we were saying in our last episode on why, in terms of like you can't just write off an exercise and say this is useless. You can look at it and be like, okay, what is this actually contributing to my system? And same thing in this situation, right? It's like what can I use this tool for to benefit me in what I'm about to do?
Yeah.
I think that's part of the issue with the fitness and performance industry in general is I think we've all been involved in it long enough to have seen these things come and go as like the answer. It gets sold as like Kelly Starrett sold foam rolling and trigger point balls and that shit as the answer to every problem you ever had. Like, fuck man, I spent 45 minutes lying on a foam roller and a lacrosse ball and I was still shit.
Yeah.
and then I stopped doing that and I started moving and doing a more like deliberate and specific approach to things, and it worked better.
Man, that's what I've found. I do far less of the self-care
me
stuff.
too.
I know my list now. I have to do some thoracic mobilization because I have pretty bad thoracic.
Yeah.
have to do pec work because I'm always protracted in my shoulders when I'm working.
Yeah.
And as a powerlifter, I get really like anterior pelvic tilt. So I'll do some like QL release work, some TFL work, and like do some stretching with a Bulgarian split squat.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my setup that I know for me. But you don't have to do like global stuff. And,
No.
And you've got warm-ups to mobilize those positions too.
Yeah.
It just comes down to why do you do the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Quinn touched on that really well in the episode that we did with him about like the test-retest thing. Like, it shouldn't necessarily be like, okay, this 15 minutes of my training session, I'm going to foam roll and roll on a trigger point ball, and then I'm going to separate that from my 15 minutes of dynamic warm-ups. And like the whole thing should be minced together in an approach where you can do something and see the change and access that position and train that position, rather than do it and then hope that the effect that you got from it has lasted the extra 10 minutes that you've spent doing it to then be in that position lifting.
Well, that's just about a good use of time anyway. Like,
Exactly.
I don't see a reason to not be doing a little bit of pec release work under the squat while you're waiting to get back on the squat bar or something.
Yeah.
You know? There's no reason to not do that to save your shoulders a bit.
And I think that's certainly from my approach and the way I encourage people to do their warm-up process is like start with some movement and see how you feel, and then approach your warm-up every session you do in a way that allows you to address how you feel today.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people fall into like, this is how I warm up, and they just do the same for activation exercises, and they never actually get any benefit from them because it's just it's like, I'm just doing this because it's the thing that I do, rather than I'm doing this with intent and a deliberate focus.
That's tough though, because not everyone's a coach and they can't know those things. Like,
no, exactly.
That's why when I always tell people they just need to get good advice, like on how to lift and the stuff to do. Yeah. Otherwise, you will find yourself doing whatever you see on the internet.
Yeah.
And there's so many like tick and cross things on Instagram now. Like,
I'm all about that green tick, red cross.
Man, in the age of Kelly Starrett, so that's like the 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
Little Thomas, with his athletic mindset, got this adductor tear, started getting hip pain, and that, what I didn't know at the time was that was my torn labrum, right?
I start squatting with your toes forward.
I've really tried, but I got so obsessed with a bunch of hip stretches, and I only did them for my left side, and I'm pretty sure I made myself mega mobile on the left compared to the right, and then just started bottoming out all my squats, which in hindsight, looking back, I know that if you bottom out a squat without good support here and around your hips,
he's pointing to his abs when he says here,
good support around your trunk and your hips, then you're just squatting on joints, right? And that's eventually going to lead to labral
Well, you
issues.
just mobilize yourself to get into a more vulnerable position.
Exactly.
With still no support.
Yeah, but I kept doing that for 2 more years, religiously, every single day.
It's so weird having been through a few cycles of powerlifting, like
trends
and stuff, and now, like, looking back, there's so many times I thought, I was like, this is it.
Yeah,
This
100%. Like, we've answered it. Why are we still doing this?
Yeah.
Like, why isn't everyone doing this?
And then I look back later, I'm like, oh, that was really dumb.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I have an epiphany moment, I'm like, let's just ride this out for a while, because probably I'm going to realize this is stupid later on.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was in a very, very similar position, but without the dodgy hips. But my understanding of that, like the mechanism, perhaps not the mechanism, as Matt pointed out, my anatomy knowledge is not spectacular.
Oh, you've been studying from a 1600s book. So.
1700s, and those prints are fucking sick. I'll show you the photo later. But my understanding has always been that tightness and that stiffness comes from it's a protective mechanism. And so by spending your whole life mobilizing to the point of end range, all you're doing is like shutting off a protective mechanism that isn't necessarily going to be a positive at the end of that.
There's a reason why it's
exactly.
tight.
Like you're tight for a reason, and if you're not addressing the reason, then you're in trouble.
Totally. Unless the reason is you're getting tight because you're doing powerlifting, and that's when you should just get tight glutes and pecs and stuff that you're actually working. But usually it's that one-sided stuff and some compensation thing because you're not actually stabilized where you need to be.
Yeah.
And so you're meant to be sore. You don't really want to shut that down. You need to learn the lesson that you're trying to get taught.
Yeah. You shouldn't just be blindly mashing your body into the ground.
Yeah.
You should be listening to the messages that you're getting from your body and addressing the issues.
Yeah, and just, I guess it's good to have a mentality of just not accepting, like, at least unilateral pain. Like if you're getting pain on one side, like worry about that. Like why is that happening? Maybe if it was both sides of your lower back, you could be like, oh, my dad deadlifted pretty hard today. It makes sense, I'm a bit domsy there. But if you're always wrecked on one side, start thinking about maybe there's an issue with something.
But that's, I think, the hardcore warrior mentality that we all love about powerlifting that's been around for so long has driven people to the point where they're like, it's like tough to be in pain. Like
We're so past that now, though. We're in another phase now where you've got...
We might be, but several other people might not be.
My Instagram studies tell me that the world has passed this point and that everybody now wants everything to be totally pain-free and you shouldn't be using your erectors and your deadlift at all.
Yeah, we've just swung completely the
We've gone
direction.
to this weird like eggshell thing, and you need to train and like work hard to be a good powerlifter as well.
Yeah. It should hurt a little bit.
A little. It's hard work. It's like... Yeah, I don't think we need to walk on eggshells. We just need to be like doing smart things.
Yeah.
Like worry about the things that matter, not the things that don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is an interesting conversation just because the three of us have been involved in the sport for about equal periods, right? So around 10 to 12 years.
Yeah.
And we've seen these things come and go. And it's cool that we've all come up with this like collective perspective. Oh, that sounds like a rapper.
Too bad you're the whitest guy I know.
We've come up with this like collective viewpoint that we share from those experiences.
Yeah, and in very slightly different but very parallel paths.
Because we should all be the kind of people that got fucked up really early and pulled out of the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, well that's why
because we all did some really dumb things.
That's why we have the same opinion, because we are the only ones that probably who survived those problems and had to learn the lesson to be even still participating.
Yeah.
We've all watched, like, how many people from 2012 Junior GPC Nationals are still actively competing, or at least even close to involved in the sport?
2012 Nationals, full stop.
Yeah. And that's, I think, like you said, we've all been in this long enough to have watched, it's like several, for lack of a better term, generations of lifters come through.
Yeah.
Because it seems like a generation of lifters in the Instagram age is 2 years.
Yeah.
Like you do one comp and you do okay at it, and then you get really good for the next comp, and then you take a bunch of gear and you get even better for the comp after that, and then you hate yourself.
And what then?
Yeah, exactly.
And when your mentality or when your process fails you, usually people are like, well, powerlifting wasn't for me.
Yeah.
It failed. Powerlifting wasn't for me. Instead of like, what can I do to change the way I'm doing things so that I can get to the next level, most people just drop out there.
And I think that's the difference between a outcome-based mentality and a process-based mentality.
Yeah, man.
Like if you're chasing the number or the win or whatever that outcome is, or like you're chasing self-esteem through powerlifting success or fame, fuck knows why you'd get into powerlifting for fame, but you end up in this position where when you don't hit that point, it's a failure.
Yeah.
Whereas I think to be successful in something like powerlifting, in the long term, you need a process-orientated thing where it's like, okay, I didn't succeed in the goal I had for this meet, but what did I learn in that process, and how can I then use those lessons to adjust my approach for the next comp or the next cycle or whatever that is. And I think they're the people that have that mindset are the people like us who are still here 10 years later.
It's good that we're here now in this time where like people don't expect to be in, like we said, I think people are kind of expecting things to be totally pain-free all the time, and people are walking on eggshells with their training a little bit, but that's better than the other way where people would just like I remember thinking
it's more conducive to longevity for sure.
Yeah, it is, but I think also people are more receptive to what those messages their bodies are telling them. Like when something's going down, for me, like 2012 time, if something was going wrong, I'd be like, it's squatting, I guess I'll do that to you. You know?
Yeah.
Like, just wrap it in duct tape, it'll be fine.
Yeah, literally, I'd be like, you don't get strong without problems. And then the line gets blurred about how much pain's actually all right. Whereas now, I think it's probably a better way to be totally overprotective.
They're on the slightly cautious side, for sure.
But you just got to learn the lesson like quickly. I think that's the trick now. It's like if something's going wrong, pick it up quick and say something's going weird. Again, this is like why it's so good to have a coach, because they can look at it for you. You don't even have to know. And
have a coach that you talk to about how you feel, not just you get numbers from.
Yeah, totally.
Like it has to be a communication process. In the same way that like as an athlete who comes to someone like you, if you just come in and say my elbow hurts, you need some fucking context to that, and a good coach and a good clinician can like sort of eke that out of people through questions.
On that, so often people have a sore elbow and then we'll talk about it and it actually is from squatting.
Yeah.
And it's because they like are holding the bar really poorly, or they're not getting their shoulders supported properly, and it's just overloading the elbow. That's a really common thing. But if they went to someone who didn't know anything about lifting, they might just treat their brachioradialis because that's where it hurts.
Yeah, and I've been to physios where they're like, oh, my hip hurts. Like, okay, when I'm squatting, my hip hurts. Like, okay, cool. Just don't squat. Like
that's not an option. Dude.
No, that's like we're having the wrong conversation.
Work inside the paradigm. And I'm going to keep squatting.
Yeah, and then I've had to stand there for 10 minutes of a 35-minute appointment explaining to this dude why I squat with a slightly wider stance and like what a squat suit is and those sort of things. And I think certainly when I got into the sport in Canberra, and I don't know about you guys, but I imagine when we all got into the sport, there weren't any physios, masseurs. Is that how you say that word? Anyway,
I don't even know.
Who knows? You just write it and it's fine.
A soft tissue therapist.
There you go. Perfect. Nice. And just people in that realm of the industry who actually understood lifting and understood what it's like and can be empathetic with someone that's in that position.
Well, there's still next to none.
It's getting better.
There's certainly, I think there are exponentially more than there were.
And that's more than powerlifting too. That's CrossFit too.
It's almost certainly related directly to CrossFit more than it is powerlifting.
It's weird to not lift now. Like most people have a gym membership now, and a lot of people, even like so many more women now are lifting. It's the normal for women to be lifting, not doing cardio.
So maybe let's change gears a little bit, seeing we touched on quite a bit there about your own lifting, and talk about your own lifting. We've got Pro Raw this weekend, where you will be competing in the 95 kilogram class. Tell us what you're hoping to do.
I haven't had a PB in my total or any lift, I don't think, for like 3 years, so that's my goal. I hit some pretty good numbers in training. I went 350 squat, a 202 bench, and a 325 deadlift. So if I can hit those, that's going to be already like a 17 kilo PB. But I like to hit more on my squat. I've had some problems with my knee, so that'll be just on the day. But then my bench, I think I can go more than 202, and deadlift 325 felt really good. So if I need to go up, I think I could probably go up to 332, but it depends how everything goes after the whole day.
I have to make sure this doesn't get released until after the competition, so no one knows Matt's plans.
I really doubt it's going to be released tomorrow.
Given it took us an hour to get the microphones to work, I think you're probably right.
I quickly assessed the situation.
So, what are your current PBs, and when were they done?
My best squat was it's 330. I've done it a bunch of times since, but I first hit it at Pro Roll 7. And I hit a 205 bench, I think then as well. No, that was Pro Roll 6 at 205. And then I hit 210 in the gym like later that week.
Yep.
And I haven't been able to reproduce that for ages. I've hit 205 for like a few more times, 200 a bunch more times. And deadlift, I hit 325 at Pro Roll 7 as well. I've done like 320 again since then, but like nothing much.
So what's been different about this training cycle that's put you in the better position for that? Is it all just in how you've approached training from a like programming and physical perspective? Have you changed how you think about the sport?
Yeah, man. You touched on like process orientation before, and I'm a lot more about that now. I used to really chase numbers all the time, and not doing the thing that was actually going to get you there, instead of just like really wanting to do it. Like your hopes and dreams don't count on the platform, unfortunately. Otherwise,
we'd all be fucking experts.
Yes, but I mean, Thomas is coaching me now, so that's been really good because it's kind of sifted through a lot of those, false epiphany moments I've been holding on to, things I thought were really important that actually weren't.
Yep.
My squat's the one I'm going to get the biggest improvement on this time around, and that's been because I was really, really worried about keeping my core braced. And I was kind of dropping my ribs down to make sure I was not going to lose my core bracing. And Thomas said to me, he's like, well, you're actually rounding your thoracic over heaps. You just need to trust that your core is going to do its thing, and you need to hold a good upper thoracic position. So started working on that and just letting that do its thing, and gave it some volume over 16 weeks or so, and everything's been awesome. And I've had no problems in my arms. I've been pain-free, which is great, because for my work I usually have heaps of issues.
Are you going to be able to hold on to a deadlift this time around?
Can we edit this out of the podcast, please? Yeah, I think so. I haven't had any issues so far. It's been really good.
Excellent.
I think it's easy as if you're listening to this, it's easy to be like, okay, well, Pro Raw 6 was in 2014, so it's been almost 5 years. Well,
Yeah.
4.5
man,
years.
That sounds
'cause
so bad.
But it does sound bad, and I think what people lose sight of is all the life that's happened in between that.
Yeah.
Like all the massive
Yeah,
changes.
it's
and-
not like you've done 100 meets since then and you just have been shit at all of them. You've done a lot of things outside of powerlifting, the sport that you do for fun, in between then and now.
And this isn't justifying the like on paper seemingly slow progress. This is like
Providing
it's
context.
it's really easy to scroll through Instagram and just judge lifters on the progress they've made in X amount of years and be like what they're doing's wrong or what they're doing's right or whatever. But there is stuff that happens outside of lifting.
Well, it neglects the fact that we all have a life outside of lifting because
Yeah.
none of us make
Yeah.
money lifting weights.
Yeah, man. And if I do well at this meet, and I think I'm gonna for myself do really well, it'll be number one because I sorted out life, stress, and I really placed powerlifting where it needs to be, which is firmly beneath other things.
Yeah, not number one in your
That doesn't
priorities.
mean that I've given it any less than 100%. It just means
No.
that I give it the time and the energy that it needs, and I don't worry about it when I'm not doing it. Like
Yeah.
I sleep better now than I used to. Comp
Yeah.
week usually I couldn't sleep. I was so worried and stressed and wound up. I'd find myself like scrolling through Facebook and Instagram trying to like see what was going on, and I just haven't been doing that. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
And I sleep through the night, and like me and Maddie down here having like a good time in Melbourne
Yeah.
instead of like just being so totally wound up. And I think that's going to lead to a good meet because, you know, like I said, like hopes and dreams and stress doesn't help.
Yeah, well, and you're not holding yourself back the whole time because of your
Yeah.
expectations
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the stress that you have placed upon yourself that no one else has put there. Like,
No, man, nobody else does. And you can only lift what you can lift too. I think that's another realization I had. It doesn't really matter if you get there on the day and like you just can only do your best total for that day. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just do more because you want to.
Yeah.
So you might as well just chill and just do what you're going to do.
I think it's a problem a lot of lifters have as well, and it's easy in that sort of position that you're in to be like, well, in 2014 I did this. It's like, no. What happened then, this is where your strength is at this very point in time, and you're going to maximize that on the day.
Yeah.
And you're a different person. Like, 5 years is a long time to get stronger physically if all you fucking think about is powerlifting. And
Yeah.
by that point, you'll have fucking just killed yourself because you've just trained into the ground over 5 years and got nowhere.
Yeah, man.
Because priority one has been powerlifting and you've ruined all of your personal relationships and no one likes you anymore. It's a miserable place to be because then you realize like, oh yeah, no one cares about powerlifting.
Yeah, that's it, man. I had a conversation with someone recently and they were asking me like, they said to me, do you think I can squat 400? And I said, yeah, man, I think that you can. But he was coming to me talking to me about how he was feeling a bit burnt out from the sport. And I said, I think the only reason you won't hit 400 is not because your technique's crap. It's not because you're not strong enough or don't have the talent. You'll just quit.
Yeah.
Because I can see you already getting so stressed about this. You'll quit before you ever do it. So as a marathon sport, like everyone always talks about, if you don't, give it the energy, sort your life out so you can actually go and do it, instead of it like detracting from everything and eventually you have to pull out because your relationship's gone to shit or your job's going really poorly or you suddenly realize you've been neglecting all these aspects of your life. Well, you'll quit suddenly and you won't achieve what you want to achieve, and that's all going to be on you.
It's like John always talks about this idea of identity and where your identity lies, and the difference between being I'm a powerlifter and I'm a guy who does powerlifting.
Yeah. Sometimes I want to meet Pro Raw 6 Matt and slap him.
Dude, the more I've grown up as an adult, the more I've realized if you don't look like 5 years back and think like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like 30-year-old John does not want to hang out with 21-year-old John because he was a cunt.
Yeah. Well, this is 5 Pro Raws since Pro Raw 6, and that was the last time I threw a belt.
Excellent.
So I've come far.
Excellent.
Pro Raw 6 I had abs.
Maybe you could throw a belt in celebration. You could do like a university graduation style, take your belt off and throw it
So
up
dangerous.
in the air.
I'll get a sting belt.
So dangerous.
I'll get a sting belt.
We could definitely source one of those.
Just a dummy belt.
If anywhere in the world's going to have a spare shitty
It'll
belt
be
to
the
throw,
Arnold.
yeah. Or is it the Arnold's?
Arnold Sport.
Correct.
Yes.
I don't know what else we're talking about. Do we have anything else to talk about? We have questions.
Who are you excited to watch at Pro Raw outside of your own lifting?
Man, I've been like mega attached to a bunch of people who I've been treating. Like more so even than my own lifting. Like firstly, my training partner Ryan Mayfield, he's
He's
do
done
really well.
really
It's only
well.
his second 3-lift comp, and he'll. My hopes for him, if the day goes like perfect, I think he's probably going to end up going a 335 squat, a 182 bench, and probably going to pull 340.
Nice.
But that's just going to come down to whether or not he's wants to be cautious or not, you know. But I think that he could stretch to those points, maybe even slightly higher on the bench. So I'm pretty psyched about him.
Yeah, nice.
Jen Smith, like her and I are really close, and I think she's going to do really well. And Dave Stearman, his squat's gone insane. Who else? But besides that, like there's the big guys. Like I really want to see what Dylan does in super heavies, and who else we got?
In the supers? Polly?
Well, Polly. I know what Polly's going to do. We've talked about that 100 times.
Yeah.
But he's going to have another great meet. Hopefully go 1,000 again.
Awesome.
Jen Smith. Alex Deakin, he's always, like, I want to see him have, like, the perfect meet.
Yeah.
And see what he
I
can
feel
do.
like he's been waiting for the perfect meet for a little while now. In that, like, it's never quite gone as perfectly as it could.
Yeah, but...
And if it does, it'll be phenomenal.
Oh, man, he's the man.
Really good lifter.
Yeah, and it's really, like...
Good guy.
Always does the same. Like, his lifting always looks great.
Yeah.
Like, it's really consistent. And
Really consistent.
Yeah, I think that's something that I want to be more like that. Have it always look the same.
Yeah, I've realised I've become much more judgmental, and I actually judge how good of a powerlifter you are, not on your total, but entirely on how consistently your technique
Man,
stays
I was
together.
judging a novice comp like about 2 years ago, and I started realising after about an hour that I was red lighting for poor technique.
I'm not going to look at that. Red lights.
No good. go back, try again. Luckily there was 2 other good refs there.
That was technically to the rules, but it looked gross, and so you get reds.
Was that one of my novice comps?
I'm not sure. It wasn't.
Classic.
All right. Do you want to bust out these questions?
Do we remember what the questions are? I feel like I wrote them down last time we had this discussion.
You're the arbiter of the questions.
Why am I the arbiter of the questions? I've already proven tonight that I can't be the arbiter of microphones.
True.
So.
The first question is, if you were to go out and have a meal with someone alive, anyone in the world, who would it be?
Firstly, it would be bread.
Matt's having dinner with a loaf of Tip Top and nothing else.
Oh, man. Like one person in the world who I'd want to have dinner with. Oh, there's this guy whose podcast I listen to named Tom Bilyeu, and he made Quest Nutrition. And
Okay.
he's does heaps of work on mindset that's been like super valuable to me.
Yeah, cool.
So that would be epic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I found the questions. I wrote them down. Favorite lifting memory? Doesn't have to be your own. Can be like the one we always use for coaches. Like can be someone you've coached or.
Yeah, right. Okay. It definitely wasn't Pro Roll 7. And it definitely wasn't Pro Roll 6. It would have been. It would have been when I did an 800 kilo total for the first time at 90 kilos body weight at I think it was GBC Nationals 2014. But the funniest thing about it, and the reason why I love it, is because after I did the deadlift that got me the win, I jumped up. It was the first celebration I've ever done. And I haven't done another one since. Because I landed, and I didn't know at the time, but the next day someone was like, dude, did you roll your ankle? And there's a video of it, and it just totally, it's like the worst inversion sprain. If I didn't have high top Converse on, it would have snapped my ankle in half.
Because nothing says ankle stability like a bit of canvas laced to your ankle.
Oh man, it was that thin layer of protection that I needed.
You're a very
I still
finely
have
tuned
the video.
athlete.
Yeah.
What's the most important thing you can pass on to someone who's just getting into lifting? Let's say in their first year of lifting, what's the one thing that if you only had one opportunity to get a point across, what would it be?
Oh man, I mean, like I can't go past just say go and get advice so that you don't have to learn all the lessons yourself. You can skip those pain points and go and learn from someone who's going to bypass that. Yeah.
Often because they've done it themselves.
Probably at this point where we all are now.
Yeah.
In powerlifting world in Australia, at least, it's because we've all learned through the hard way.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather somebody doesn't have to go down that path.
Yeah.
I think you were the first person that ever said this to me, and I say it all the time now, is that coaching is a shortcut.
Oh man, it's the shortcut. It's
yeah.
and even now, like your thing is coaching. Like, you guys do that. So I don't do that. I think about what bad coaching might do to somebody. And so maybe it's a bit like when you're trying to avoid hitting the deer and you end up hitting the deer because you're staring at it. I have such shitty technique because I'm always worried about bad technique. But like,
you're manifesting your own shit technique.
I am. But yeah, I think you just got to go to the person who has made it their life. Like, they're going to know the most about it. They obsess about it in the way that I obsess about my thing.
Yep, I think that's an important point to get across. I don't know where that sentence was going. It just kind of started.
You're very drunk.
It had potential.
I'm offended. So the last one is my favorite question, and I think we touched on it when you talked about your epiphany moments. What's something in the more recent history that you used to believe firmly, like where you'd drawn a line in the sand, this is how I think, and you've since changed your mind?
Something I used to believe that I've since changed my mind.
Be it your approach to lifting, your approach to mindset, your approach to like your work and how you treat people, things like that. Like, it doesn't just have to be your lifting; it can be anything.
I think it would be that you don't need to drop the ball in every aspect of your life for a short or a long term to be a good powerlifter. I know now that you don't need to.
You can be good at things other than just powerlifting.
And you don't have to be.
That's a revelation.
I think you've got to be tunnel visioned for a little while and really think about it, and that'd be doing a disservice to yourself if you didn't. But you don't need to go to the dark place for lifting. That's not a thing that you have to do, and you can't also use it to justify poor behavior in the rest of your life as well, because that's going to come back and punish you later.
Yeah, prepping for a powerlifting meet is not an excuse to be an asshole.
Yeah, man. It's just it's meant to be fun. Let it be fun. Don't let it be a burden. Yeah.
It shouldn't be something you have to do. It should be something you get to do.
Yeah, and it has been something I've had to do before, but that was totally self-imposed. So I guess that's
I
what
know,
it is.
Dude, I've been there. That's why I haven't competed actively in years.
Yeah.
Because I got to that point where I was like, I feel like I have to do this.
Yeah.
It's not fun anymore. So what's the point?
I guess a new line in the sand for me is if you're not enjoying it, if it's not bringing you happiness, just stop it. Whatever it is, don't do it. Yeah.
I think that's a great point to end on.
Perfect. Matthew Stenzel, where can people find you? You don't know your Instagram.
You don't have to give us your.
I actually don't know my Instagram. I have two of them.
It's Matt. One of them's got a number 14 in it.
Yeah, that's the old one.
That's the old one. Don't use that one. Right, I'm going to look you up. John, where can we find you while we do this? It's Matt_Stenzel. And it's the one that has recent posts, not ones from 2016.
I wish I had access to that.
Also,
I'm really worried about how many
where,
books I'd have.
Where can people find your wonderful hands?
Oh, well, the business is called Axiom Performance Recovery. We're on all major social media platforms.
Excellent. I'm at JustShero on Instagram.
At Tombro7 /@0_weakness.
Also on bodybuilding.com is Stenzinator.
I forgot to plug my gym. You get to plug your gym. No, I didn't plug mine.
Go.
At Burley Strength.
Give us 5 stars.
Tell your mum.